Hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Danny, and today I'm excited to give you the first video of our Getting Started tutorial series, which is the basics to connect Chauncey to Unreal Engine. And that includes downloading the sample project that we're going to be using in the tutorial, installing our Chauncey for Unreal plugin, creating a channel list on our Chauncey web editor, creating subscribe and publish events inside your Unreal blueprints, creating a binding asset, and using our debug controller, which also includes a mobile version. So in the end, you'll be able to control your Unreal project from a mobile device or any kind of extended web control interface. Okay, so before we get started with the tutorial, there's a few things you're going to need if you want to follow along. We're using Unreal Engine 5.1 for this tutorial. We have a sample project that we'll download. It's built for Unreal 5.1, so you can go to this link and download Unreal Engine and install it. You're also going to need a Chauncey Live account, so you can go to app.chauncey.live/signup and you can sign up for an account. You're going to need the Chauncey for Unreal plugin, which you can get from chauncey.live/plugins. And then for the sample project, you can go to our website, hit the Learn tab, go to this Getting Started Basics to connect Chauncey to Unreal Engine. And if you scroll down, you'll find a link that you can download the sample project we're using. Okay, with the prerequisites out of the way, the first thing we're going to do to get this tutorial started is just download the sample project. The sample project is a zip file. You can extract it into wherever you keep your Unreal projects. In my case, it's Documents Unreal Projects. The next thing we're going to do is install the Chauncey for Unreal plugin to this project. Our plugins work on a project level, so I'm going to create a new folder called Plugins. And then I'm going to go back to the website and download the plugin to drop into that folder. From the home page, you can click Plugins. And then we just have one release of our plugin at this point, built for 5.1. So I'll go into that plugin zip file, look for Windows 5.1, and there's two plugins in this folder that you will need, so I'll copy those and paste them into the project Chauncey Samples plugins folder. Okay, now that we have the plugins, I can just open up the project. And then once the project is open, you just want to check to make sure that the plugin that we installed is enabled. So I'll go to Edit, Plugins, and type in Chauncey. And I can see here that it came in enabled. If for whatever reason this doesn't come in enabled and this box isn't checked, just check it and you'll get a prompt to restart your editor. And then once you reopen the project, your plugin should be enabled. So I can close this, and then the next step is to authenticate your Chauncey account. So if you go to Window, you'll see this new option, Chauncey Editor. I'll click on that, and that will bring you to a prompt to log into your Chauncey account. Okay, so I entered my credentials and pressed login, and now you've connected your Chauncey Live account to this project so that you can send data between the two. So you can now close this window. The next thing, I'm just going to take a look at what's going on in this project. So we have a very simple level here, and there's a blueprint in the middle of it that we've set up that just has a couple parameters exposed using Blueprint for you to kind of have a control over the visibility, the scale, and the rotation of that blue cube. So if I click play in the editor, and then I go to the BP platform Getting Started, and I click on that, if you use the details panel here, you can see that there's this controls section, and under controls, I can then just toggle like the visibility and then trigger that event, and it's just going to turn the cube on and off. I can adjust the scale of the cube and then hit that scale button, which is just triggering an event, and that adjusts the scale. And obviously the rotation is going to do a similar action. It's just going to rotate that cube. So let's hit stop. We'll go into that blueprint and just take a look at what the functions are that are driving those parameters. So I have three functions here that we've created. They're very simple, but basically it's a custom event for the Boolean that is triggering the visibility of the cube using this Boolean variable. And then similar for the scale and the rotation, we have a custom event, a vec3, a custom event, and a float. So that's how we're driving those items from the editor, because we've exposed them in in the details panel call in editor so that you can see them when you're in run mode. And what we're going to do in the next step is we're going to go into Chauncey Live, we're going to create a new project, and we're going to create a channel list that mimics these variables. So I'm going to close this blueprint, I'm going to minimize Unreal, and now we're going to go over to the Chauncey Live editor. So here in a new tab, I'll go to app.chauncey.live. I'll use my credentials to log in. Once you're logged in, you'll be brought into a dashboard. Yours will most likely be empty if you're a new user. I have a few projects here that we've been working on. Basically, the first thing you'll do is just create a new project. When you create a new project, it brings you directly into the channel editor, which is exactly what we want. So the first thing I'll do is click on this new project title up at the top, and that'll allow you to rename the project. I'll name mine Getting Started. And then based on the blueprint that we saw in the Unreal project, I'm going to create channels, and those channels are going to mimic exactly what the variables were in the project. So first thing is I'll click and create a new group. I'll name that group Cube Controls. And then if you hover over that group, you'll see a new plus button, which will allow you to create channels within that. So the first one we have was the cube visibility, and that was a Boolean. So I'll create a Boolean. I'm going to name this Cube Visibility. Again, I'm going to hover over the group, create a new channel. This one will be a Vec3, which we're going to use to control the scale. So Cube Scale. And then one more channel for the rotation. This one is a float. Okay, so we've created 3 new channels, and they're all sitting in this group Cube Controls. If you toggle over to the last item on the left menu here, which is our debug, you'll notice what happens is this creates a custom interface for you that's auto-populated based on your channels. So it's a simple interface that's actually very similar to what happens when you expose a variable to call an editor in Unreal. It just kind of creates a user interface for you, only this one is running in the web. And then as I adjust these properties, what you'll notice on the left is you get an output log of those value changes. So this allows you to see that data is being sent when you're making changes here, but it'll also allow you, if changes are being published from Unreal, you'll be able to see those changes coming from Unreal into that event log here to make sure that the connection is made. Okay, we'll come back to this later, but for now, we'll minimize this window and we'll go back into Unreal now that we have our Chauncey channel list created. So inside our project, let's create a Chauncey binding asset, and then we'll use that asset to reference that channel list we just created. So anywhere in here, I'll put it with the level, right click, go to miscellaneous, and click Chauncey binding asset. I'll name this Getting Started. I'll save my level, and then I'm going to open it up. And you'll notice you're presented with a custom graph editor, which allows you to kind of route data from that channel list into your project. So on the top right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to use these drop downs to select the controller that we created in Chauncey. So select controller. These were the projects that you saw on my dashboard. This Getting Started was the one that we created, so I'll select that. And then channel list, just select latest. Now what you'll see is this node has been updated and it has populated with the channels that you created. So you'll see little pins that are used to connect to your blueprint, one on either side, one for sending data or subscribing data from the platform to Unreal, and one that you can publish data from Unreal to our platform. So now we have a controller built in Chauncey. We have a binding asset that is prepared to route the data from that controller into Unreal. And now all we need to do is connect these to the blueprint that we have in our level. Okay, now that we have the binding asset set up, the next thing to do is we'll minimize this binding asset and we're going to go into the platform Getting Started. So inside the blueprint, we've already seen that we have this kind of local logic set up. And what we want to do is we kind of want to mimic what's happening here, but we want to drive it from Chauncey. So to do that, I'm going to take these 2 items here, this cube actor and the setting the visibility function of it. I'm going to copy and paste those over to this Chauncey subscribe so that we can subscribe this from a Chauncey custom event. So to do that, I'm going to right click, I'll type in Chauncey, and at the top of the list, you'll see an add subscribe node. This function is very similar to a custom event, only it's listening for what's happening in that binding asset. So I'll name this sub cube visibility. And then what we want to do is we want to set the visibility of the cube based on whatever comes in from this event, and then use that to set the visibility inside of Unreal. So before we move on with all of the other connecting all of the scale and rotation, the next thing I want to do is I want to go back to the binding asset and just show you what we can do to get it actually connected. So from here, inside the binding asset, if I right click, I can now see that sub cube visibility event that I just created. And so I can add it to this graph and then just connect the pins. And now this project, and in particular that blueprint, is subscribed to any changes that are coming from the Chauncey platform. So it's kind of listening for any changes. So I'll save this. The last thing you need to do before you actually test the connection is take this binding asset that we created and pull it into the level so that there's a reference of it inside your world. So I'll save all. And now what I'm going to do is just run the level, and I'll open up a side-by-side of this editor and my Chauncey controller. And now with the two of them open, I can go to the debug and I can use this Boolean to drive data into the level. So now your project is technically connected, at least the cube visibility is connected and can be driven by this web interface. We haven't set up the scale and rotation, which we'll do in a minute, but before I do that, I just want to show you one thing, which is if I go to this BP platform getting started and hit it, and then I change the visibility from here, let's say I toggle it to be not visible, and I update. Well, it happens in the level. The cube does disappear, and this cube visibility is set correctly, but this didn't update. So all we did in that initial, by adding a Chauncey subscribe node, is we said, listen for changes that are coming from here. But what we didn't do is we didn't publish changes that are coming from Unreal to Chauncey. So we'll do that in the next step. To finish setting up this Unreal level, I'll go back into the getting started and we'll add a few more nodes so that everything is connected. The first thing I'll do is just make sure that everything is subscribed to changes that are happening from Chauncey. So I'll right click, type in Chauncey again. I'm going to add a subscribe node. I'll name it sub cube scale. And then this pin right here, we're not going to control the scale of this from a Boolean. So if you click on this event node that we created, right here under inputs, we need to change this to be vector because that's the variable type that we need to drive the rotation, the scale of this cube. So I can again take these two elements, paste them over here into this comment box, and then I'm going to take the scale, set it, and then use the subscribe node to connect the event pin. Okay, and now that one's set up. Notice in this list we have all of the variable types that Unreal offers. We don't actually offer every variable type. We only offer the most common ones. If you follow the list that's inside the channel editor, these are the items, these are the channel items that you can select from, or the channel types that you can select from. So action is just an event, Boolean, string, float, integer, vec2, 3, 4, transform, color, which is linear color, and raw, which is JSON. So those are the supported channel types that we have at this time, and we plan to add more down the road. Okay, so back in Unreal, we'll finish setting up our blueprint. I'm going to add one more subscribe node, this one for the rotation. So add subscribe node, we'll name it sub cube rotation. This one was a float. I'll pull this variable and set that And then I'm going to copy these two functions and we're setting the Z rotation. Okay. So now we have our blueprint set up and ready to be subscribed to any changes coming in. And now we want to do the publishing. Publishing is a little different. The process is the same for adding it. So we'll go Chauncey, add publisher node. We'll name it pub cube visibility. So in this case, Unreal is actually the input that's going to send the data to Chauncey, right? So it's basically a character would be walking around, he opens a door, and you need Chauncey to be able to receive the data that door is now open. And so we already have a way through the editor to be sending data or to be triggering events in that cube, such as visibility. So really, this is the event that you want to use to publish. When this happens, I want to publish that change also to Chauncey, not just to the local engine. So in here, I'm going to change this channel type to Boolean because that's what we're listening for. And then I'm going to take the value from this variable and I'm going to connect the pin. So now in the editor, again, when I change the Boolean checkbox, I hit update. That will also trigger, hey, send that value back to Chauncey so that it's up to date and synced with what's happening in your project. Okay, so I'll finish up just the last two nodes. The cube scale is a vector. I'll connect this variable here and this event pin here. And the last one is the rotation. Okay, so our blueprint is all set up. It's ready to receive anything that's coming in from the binding asset. So the last thing to do is to go back into the binding asset and we'll hook up or find those event pins that we created. So again, in the event graph, I'll right click and now you'll see all of these new subscribe and publish nodes that we created. So I can just go through the list and start adding them. Sub cube rotation, we'll connect that here. Cube scale. And then on this side here, these are the publishing. This is where you're going to do your publishing. So those are nodes as well. Here I have visibility, scale, and rotation. Okay, so now that that's all set up, we'll give it a test. One thing I forgot to mention is we have default values that we've assigned to this cube. For instance, the visibility of it, we want it to be visible when you start. So this default value in your channel list is something that we need to set before we get started. So go back to your channel list here, and for cube visibility, we'll toggle this to be true. The scale, when we start this, we want it to be 1, 1, 1, because that's going to match what the scale is of the cube here, 1, 1, 1. And cube rotation, it starts at 0, so that's fine. Okay, so now that we have the default value set, we can open up the debug, and I can now use this channel list control to remotely control the cube inside my Unreal project. So manipulate the rotation. This is a scrub, a number scrub. This little arrow here will reset you back to whatever your default value is. But also I can come into my project here. I can click on this platform getting started, move it up, and I should be able to manipulate these variables here, these properties, and see those update from Chauncey. So notice when I check the visibility and update that, this checkbox is updating as well. The scale, those values change here. and the rotation. Great. So now we have a connection between Chauncey and Unreal. We're able to send data from a web interface. So a couple things to note about what we've just done here. This interface in your account can be accessed from anywhere. So you can run this project that you have on the left side, let's say on a Zoom call, and then open up this controller and modify that project. The other thing is, if you click on this little mobile icon, it will pull up a mobile debug, which I'll do now. Once I've scanned the QR code, it's going to prompt you to log into your account. And then when you do, you'll see a representation or a channel list for control via mobile device. So as I click the checkbox on my mobile device, notice it updates in Unreal. It's sending that value through Chauncey to your Unreal project, but it's also updating on the web interface that I have on the right side. Same goes if I update my channel list from here or make a modification or send data from my channel list here. Those values are being changed both on the mobile device and in Unreal. So those are the very basics that you need to know to connect Chauncey to Unreal Engine. We've gone over the channel list, the basic interface, including the debug, and how that auto generates a controller for you, how you can pull that up on mobile. And just one thing to note is if I had multiple instances of this project open, let's say I packaged this project and I've distributed it and 4 people have it open, this controller that we've created is going to send data into all 4 of those projects. The plugin that we have and the connections that you make inside of your project, those will stay intact for any of the distributed apps that you've made. And the same goes for all of those applications. Will be sending data back to the platform. I hope this video was helpful to get you started in Unreal. We're really excited to see what you guys can create using Chauncey channels, connecting those to Unreal projects, and we're also excited to create new videos to show you some functional practical applications using Chauncey with Unreal. Thanks and see you next time.